Father and mother were taken in by brother 2 years ago after sister moved out of state. So what does that tell you? It tells you that mom and dad were living with sister, right? And then when she moved out, then out of state, then brother stepped up. And mom fell in the backyard, required a rehab to help with her back. After 6 weeks now, rehab has been completed, but brother refuses to let her back into his house. All right. Brother refuse. No word what happens to father. Is brother still taking care of father? I don't know. Father just kind of drops out of the picture at this point. But anyway, brother no longer wants responsibility and wants to leave her in the facility indefinitely. Listen, very common, where the situation gets to a point where there is an emergency, a slip and fall, a disease. Falls are very common, probably the most common, where somebody who's caring for a loved one at home, now they have to go to a rehab facility. They have to go. And uh, once they're there, then we go on to additional residential care because the prior caregiver either cannot or will not, it's hard to say what the difference is, continue to care for the loved one at home. Uh, a very, uh, One of the things you hear all the time from kids is when they try to take care of mom and dad and they say, oh, no, we'll take care of them at home, because mostly that's what kids want to do. There's a generation of kids that did want to care for mom at home, didn't want them in a facility, et cetera, residential care facility. Don't want that. And then they're back in a couple of weeks. And the story is, I had no idea. All right. It is very easy to underestimate the amount of work that it takes to care for someone in your home. Now, sometimes it doesn't take much, right? So, my sainted Irish grandmother lived with us, uh, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. Seems like most of my growing up, my grandmother lived with us. And she was fine. I mean, not like she helped out a lot, because she didn't. But I mean, she was with us. She wasn't difficult. I mean, it wasn't, with 8 kids in the family, you can imagine, in the typical small houses we had in the 50s and 60s and 70s. There wasn't a lot of room, but she watched her programs and went downtown with her friends, and that was pretty much what she did. Okay. But it wasn't like we were caring for her. Now, towards the end of life, um, we were, and eventually, and I believe she died at home. She may have had some hospitalization right towards the end, but that was a huge burden. I was at school while that happened, and away at college, but that was a huge burden on mom, who was an RN. Anyway, she knew what she was doing. And of course, that's when you didn't, unless you absolutely had to put someone in a nursing home, you didn't do it. But it was a huge burden, but at least mom knew what was going on. Nowadays, people have no concept of what it takes to actually have someone in their home. And so it is frequent when that level of care ratchets up a few more notches, because there's been an injury or what have you, that they're like, look, I'm done with this now. I haven't been on vacation in X number of years. I can't go to the softball game. I can't, all kinds of things that are required when you're caring for a loved one, at home. That's just the reality of the thing. So, if brother has taken care of mom for 2 years and doesn't want to do it anymore, you can understand why, especially now that there's been a slip and fall. So now the suggestion is, remember, we're talking about adult protective services earlier. So what if mom slips and falls again? Now whose fault is that? Oh, brother's being neglectful of mom because she slipped and fell once and had to go to the rehab, and then he puts her back out in the same backyard. And it's like, now it's not just a matter of willingness, it's a matter of ability, to care for mom. She's already demonstrated that the house is a dangerous place. How? By going into 6 weeks of rehab, from this fall. Well, what's brother supposed to do now? Lock her in the room? Come on. That's not reasonable or fair. Anyway, so brother doesn't want the responsibility anymore. He wants to leave her there indefinitely. which may very well be in mom's best interest. The rehab facility is holding her there against her will and refused to discharge her because my brother told him he doesn't want her back. I cannot even take her out to lunch. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's not like the facility can discharge her to the gutter. It's not like you can put her in a taxi cab and say, here's $20, take her wherever she says. Facility can't do that. They've got it's a medical facility. It's a rehab. It's a skilled nursing facility. That's what because it's rehab. It's a skilled nursing facility. She's a patient. The patient has to have some place to go. All right. And she doesn't have a place to go because brother said she can't come here. All right. What are they supposed to do? What do you want to do you want to give her bus fare? Hey, there's the bus coming by in 20 minutes. Hop on it and good luck to you. No, they're just being responsible by doing this. Let's see. You want to take her out to lunch? Why don't you let her move in with you? How about that? There's an idea. And that says my mother is not incapacitated or a danger and is of sound mind other than usual elderly forgetfulness. Well, what the heck is elderly forgetfulness? All right. Some people's elderly forgetfulness is the other person's, symptoms of Alzheimer's. I mean, we don't really know what's going on here. And then the question is what my brother is what my brother doing legal? Yeah, of course it's legal. He doesn't have to have mom in if he doesn't want to. And she's gone. She left voluntarily, right, to get the treatment. She doesn't have a lease. She has no entitlement to be in his house. And can the rehab facility legally hold her there against her will? Yes. They're not holding her there against her will. It's just they can't discharge. She could walk out. I mean, if she is competent, she can walk out if she wants to. She can sign herself out against medical advice. She can do that, right? But I'm guessing she's not as competent as our letter writer is suggesting. Okay, it's a tough situation. It is, but because there's very few people, I don't know anybody in long-term care who wants to be there. Nobody wants to be there. We don't want to get old either. Okay. But it happens. And now you got to deal with it in the best way possible, the most humane way possible. And that means you have to understand what your brother's been going through. I mean, maybe you want to take mom in yourself.